Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in one of my previous videos I basically discussed all of the ways how you can gain an opening and start basically dealing damage to your opponent. And one of the points that I mentioned here, point number 3, was basically punishing special attacks. As I was talking about that said point, I was also mentioning something called power cycle, or in general this video will be intended towards discussing power and how gaining power can help you, how opponents' increased power gain can help you, how decreasing the power gain can help you, and what are the kind of varied power cycles that are currently available in the game. Now, if I do get rid of this picture right here, so first and foremost, we need to talk about a baseline default power cycle, which I'm gonna demonstrate slightly later in the video. So if you are more of a visual learner, then do not just kind of like dismiss this video and click away from it. I will get into the gameplay bits and gameplay examples afterwards, but first, before I get to do that, I also feel it's quite important I kind of like explain a couple of things in general. Now, your baseline power cycle is the simple proportion where your opponent gains power faster than you by default game mechanic, where receiving a hit awards more power than landing a hit. That's basically as simple as that. So whenever you get hit, you get more power than if you were to land exactly the same hit. That will be your baseline power. Also, important thing to note is that champion rank is a factor in all of this and works as a multiplier. For instance, 6-star rank 1 champion will gain power slower than a 3-star rank 4 champion. They do not depend on your star level, they do depend on champion ranks, as in for instance, if you gain power at a rate which you could describe as 1, then if you have a champion at rank 2, then that power rate gets multiplied by, let's say, 1.2. If you have champions at rank 3, that power rate gets multiplied at 1.3. If you have a champion at rank 5, then the power rate gets multiplied by 1.5. So basically, the higher rank champion you have, the quicker you gain power, the more power you gain for doing the same action, which is very important, and it's also a huge major difference, for instance, in between 5-star rank 4 and rank 5 champions, in between 6-star rank 1 champions. All that being said, there are ways to vary these power cycles and how to use them to your advantage based on what type of fight you are in. Number 1 would be increase opponent's power gain. That can actually be an extremely beneficial thing for yourself. Now, you can obviously increase opponent's power rate by simply having quicker and extra access to power of your own, which enables you to land more special attacks. For instance, perfect example of that is Blade, which I will demonstrate off later on in this video as well. Another great example here would be Wasp, because Wasp is able to chain a heavy attack at the end of her combo, which means her combo ended with a heavy attack will gain opponent more power. Therefore, you will not have to rely as much on parrying or intercepting, but opponent will pretty much always have a bar of power that you can bait and exploit, so therefore you can gain extra openings. Now, in the same case here, moderate power rate increase via node can also be beneficial for you. For instance, if opponent has 50 or 100% increased power gain, you can quite often use it in your favor by simply changing your playstyle and dropping the need of having to land a parry or an intercept, because after each and every single one of your combos, there is a very good chance they will have a full bar of power, and you can just basically bait out these special ones and punish them. Now, that being said, when opponents gain too much power, it is quite frequent occurrence where you end up getting cornered and where you just die, and that is a problem. Once you start seeing 200 and 300% power gain increase, those fights can be extremely unbearable and can demand you to bring in a champion that can slow this power cycle down. Champion that can power burn, power lock, power steal, power whatever, or prevents opponent from gaining power. All that stuff is on the table. Therefore, it is extremely important to understand at which point you can deal with opponent's power via your regular fight mechanics, and at which point you need to kind of like work and counter them. Now, again, a valuable method here, as I mentioned just now, decreasing opponent's power gain can be extremely beneficial in multitude of scenarios, and there is a whole bunch of champions who can actually do that. For instance, if you're using Moon Knight at a corresponding time of the day, opponent will gain less power, therefore you will be forced to bait out less special attacks, and that is typically beneficial in scenarios where there are special attacks involved which cannot be fully dexed and would result in unavoidable block damage, or at times where champions have abilities that trigger when they fill bars of power, when they are higher bars of power, or when they throw special attacks in general. For instance, Magic is one champion which you do not typically want to gain too much power, because every time she fills a bar of power, she gets a chance to enter limbo and you take damage and you just... there are other champions who can slow down opponents' power gain, which I'm going to describe as well, and there are important and distinctive differences in between champions that slow down opponents' power rate and the ones that actually take it away via power control. And power control is something that I'm not going to go into too deep in today's video, which I'm going to look at afterwards. There are also champions who simply don't give opponent as much power whilst landing certain attacks, like Moon Knight, like Emma Frost, for example. And additional way how to manipulate and change your power cycle would be increasing your own power gain. Now, the most simple and baseline examples here would be champions like Carnage, champions like Blade, and even champions like Hyperion and Mordo, who have access to quote-unquote extra power or power gain abilities of their own. Therefore, again, you are able to reach your special attacks quicker than your opponent is, and by extension of that, if you choose to use your special attacks, you are able to push them past their bars of power and bait them out and gain extra openings. Do not have to rely on parrying or intercepting or blocking and baiting out heavy attacks. And that is, again, a viable strategy. Now, typically these champions can be used with a mix and depending on their playstyle. For instance, Hyperion is not exactly a champion where you consistently want to drop that level 1 at end of each combo, because quite frequently you do want to spam quite a lot of heavy attacks and drop a Fury, which would be the optimal way of playing the champion. However, it's still important to recognize the fact that he is effectively able to sustain himself and play in the fight by exclusively finding openings after opponent's special attacks. Therefore, you can get away with never having to parry, never having to bait special attacks, so on and so forth. And lastly, things that typically are detrimental to yourself and typically make your time and fights harder would be abilities that decrease your power gain. Now, there are very specific abilities nodes which are not too common in the game. However, champion abilities that decrease your own original or intended power gain and change the power cycle are fairly frequent and common. Namely, for instance, Doctor Strange gains no power from landing any hits, and therefore he has to rely on his power gain over time. Havoc is a similar case where he gains less power from landing or receiving hits, same as new Sorcerer Supreme, Symbiote Supreme. Then we have, for instance, Moon Knight, where if you are facing him in the wrong time of the day, you get your power gain reduced by X amount of %, so on and so forth. There's quite many different abilities which alter these power cycles, which all we should be aware of. Now, all that being said and discussed, let's just jump in the game, and I'm going to do my best to demonstrate some of the examples that I have described and how it affects the fight. You can be able to see for yourselves. So now let's just jump here. I'm again in my Realm of Legends, which is like a perfect testing ground for a vanilla fight. And speaking of vanilla fight, we can start off here with the Wasp. And I'm gonna showcase you a couple of differences. For instance, when you use her ability to heavy attack after her combo, and when you don't, and that's gonna again show you kind of like a drastic increase in a sense how often you need to parry. So you parry for the first opening, you land the second parry here, and as you can see, I have pushed him just past the bar of power. Now at this point, obviously, ideally you want to bait out a level 1, and now when you land your third combo, he's still not a bar of power, and you need to parry once more. Therefore, this kind of like a regular vanilla power gain increases your dependency on parry mastery and requires you to either intercept or parry or block bait heavy attacks more often to find extra openings. Now, from this point forward, I will start chaining my heavy attack to end of her combo, and we can see that she never has to parry again because she is giving opponent more power, and by doing that, basically she's able to find all of her openings in the fight simply by doing her regular combos. As we can see here, all the time opponent has more than bar of power every time when I finish my own combo. And with that, obviously, I'm still able also to chain my special attacks, again push opponent past the bar of power, and yeah, I have completely ditched the need to intercept blob. Well, I parried here by accident, but I have completely ditched the need to intercept, parry, or block back attacks or find any other extra opening. So this is a very simple alteration to your kind of like baseline power cycle, and that makes this fight so much easier. Okay, so now at this point, let's just check out a different champion who can use his own ability fairly similarly, and that's going to be Blade. So once again, Blade gains power when he's nearby a bleeding opponent. That's the base idea, right? So as long as opponent's bleeding, I'm going to have access to extra power gain. And once you get going, he, just like Wasp for instance, ditches the need of having to, oh, somebody got hit here. Now that's not the best gameplay here. He effectively ditches the need to find openings via parries or via intercepts. Now, Winter Soldier is acting like he has had a couple of beers, but still, he has no need for those extra openings when he randomly throws a heavy attack. He has no need for any other extra openings because he gains extra power. Therefore, he's able to throw special attack basically at every combo he makes. And that basically gives more power to Winter Soldier, and again absolutely eliminates your need for kind of like intercepting or doing whatever else. You can see at this point it's a relatively simple fight. I don't need to parry, just baiting out opponent's special attacks and we're all good. And again at this point you can see he's well past bar power, so I just need to bait out his level 1. I think this demonstration's kind of been long enough at this point, and we're gonna focus on different kind of like power cycle abilities. One thing that is important to note that obviously all the Mystic champions have a way how to alter their baseline power cycles, and that is Mystic Dispersion Mastery. Now typically you do need opponent to have buffs on them, however champions like Dr. Voodoo and Man-Thing has their ways of granting buffs to the opponent. Therefore, in combination with Mystic Dispersion, you are gaining access to quite a lot of quote-unquote extra power. And that extra power in Man-Thing's case, easiest is unlocked with a heavy attack. So you can see that there is a heavy attack, and I'm just going to drop my level 2 here because why not? Typically you gain most extra power with abusing level 1s here. So again with Man-Thing, quite casually drop a full combo, drop level 1, opponent has bar power, but obviously Man-Thing is a champion that does want to drop his heavy attacks, therefore you still want to kind of like work around it and weave them in, and therefore you still want to parry ideally. But still at the same time we can see that this power cycle is certainly allowing Man-Thing to throw a lot more special attacks than Winter Soldier is able to, or at least higher class special attacks. If you want to kind of play purely here, I will best demonstrate it right now. I'm able to throw a special attack, gain back a bar of power, throw another special attack. So basically at the time I throw through 2 special attacks, Winter Soldier has hardly gained a bar of power. And let's go again. So I'm going to drop my heavy attack. I'm nearly at 2 bars of power. So you can see how much more power I am gaining opposed to how much power Winter Soldier is gaining. So it's clearly in this case like power cycle. I have changed the baseline kind of power cycle and base abilities of how often Winter Soldier is able to throw his special attacks and how easily they come to me, which again is a very useful ability to kind of have your gameplay going. Now the next champion that I'm going to demonstrate is going to be Emma Frost, and Emma Frost has ability to slow down opponent's power cycle, which again could be extremely beneficial versus champions like Magic for instance, or many others. So at this point you can see that I have landed 2 heavy attacks. He has hardly any power and I'm past the bar of power. So at this point I'm able to throw a level 1, which again gives him a slight amount of power. Whoa, I messed up there. And once I get in my diamond form, which probably would be beneficial if I had Colossus energy, but still the base point consists that I was able to outpace Winter Soldier, for instance, to the first bar of power, and now I'm able to gain power much quicker than he is by use of these heavy attacks. Now, managing in between her diamond and telepath forms obviously can be tricky, and these kind of like forms can be manipulated via Colossus energy, so on and so forth. But at the same time, this was a very good example of how I am able to outpace opponent to the first level 1 of the fight, or if I wanted to, I could also outpace him to this to my level 2. Basically, I could be able to drop my level 2 before he's able to shoot off his first level 1. Therefore, that is extremely important. As I mentioned before, when it comes to actually slowing down opponents' power cycles, then power control and power management champions will always kind of come in handy. And last champion that I'm going to demonstrate is going to be kind of Hyperion, who is kind of like a king of power galore, because he gains so much more power than opponents possibly can. And the best thing about him is you don't even have to do anything specific, you just need to wait it out, because all of it activates automatically. And yeah, he's a champion that still has maintained his value since the time he has been released, pretty much purely exclusively due to that potent power gain ability and the fact that it can be used in many versatile different ways in fights, and him not having to actually land his basic attacks in order to be able to land his special attacks and so forth is extremely important for his relevance. So these were just some of the examples of like an average power cycle, altered power cycles, how quickly and how you can use them in your favor. For instance, slowing down opponents' power obviously slows down the rate they are able to throw their special attacks, and that can be beneficial depending on the opponent. Increasing your power cycle can also increase opponent's power cycle by throwing special attacks, and therefore decreasing your reliance on having to intercept, bait heavy attacks, so on and so forth. And all of these are very extremely important skills when your openings are getting messed with. For instance, what I mean with that, there are nodes or champion abilities that can take away your ability to intercept. For instance, you cannot intercept Rhino, therefore you need to land a parry attack, bait a heavy attack, or punish a special attack. Now, baiting a heavy attack can often be costly and it takes a lot of block damage. Landing a parry is still tricky and risky against a Rhino, because he can go unblockable and you can get hit in the face. Therefore, the best and the most kind of like efficient and foolproof way of fighting Rhino in general would be to increase your power cycle and thus increase his by throwing more special attacks, or just increase his power cycle by abilities like Wasp, so on and so forth. So these are all extremely important aspects of Mcoc champions, and they are very extremely important tools players should have in order to be able to counter nodes and difficult fight combinations, even as far as Act 6, Alliance Wars, and Endgame content, because all of this matters, all of this does make a difference, and all of this can make your experience and your fights in Mcoc champions so much easier. But yeah, next video I'm probably going to talk about power control, upsides and downsides of power control, and where it's kind of like the most needed, I suppose. But all that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, then definitely here is a baby Yoda for you, and definitely do remember to hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons. Share this video with your friends if you think it could benefit them. Share this video with your alliance mates who possibly might be struggling with the content and you think this could be a helpful video for them to kind of like change their outlook on a specific fight perhaps. All that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed baby Yoda. I hope you guys enjoyed me. If you didn't, well, then you're not overly welcome here and you should show yourselves out. All that being said, I'm done for today and I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.